И, собственно, позвольте сразу перейти к церемонии открытия и пригласить для приветственного слова Замирбека Кубанычевича Кажимуратова, заместителя министра цифрового развития Кыргызской республики. Пожалуйста, вам слово.
Спасибо. Уважаемые спикеры, гости и участники, я очень рад приветствовать вас в данном региональном форуме о жемчужине нашей страны. Цифровая трансформация стала ключевым вектором развития предприятий, отраслей и государств, не залог повышения конкурентоспособности целых экономик. Цифровая технология является основополагающей движущей силой перемен. Цифровизация, являясь одним из ключевых факторов, способствующих устойчивому развитию, помогает охватить наиболее уязвимые слои населения, используя инновации, технологическим прогрессом. На сегодняшний день большинство правительств во всем мире расширяет сферу применения цифровых технологий, создавая возможность для предоставления гражданам качественных услуг и более быстрого обслуживания, восстановления доверия общества. Я надеюсь, что данное мероприятие еще больше ускорит процесс перехода на цифровую трансформацию стран, который уже начался в странах СНГ. Региональные форумы, подобные этой, очень важны для повышения зрелости в этой области. Она позволяет представительству она очень помогает, убежден, что форум МСТ по цифровой трансформации станет заметным событием для нашего региона. Пользуясь случаем, хотелось бы выразить благодарность МСТ в лице регионального директора Марчи Натальи Вячеславовны за поддержку и проведение данного. Желаю вам плодотворной работы, а также не забывать отдохнуть и наполнить энергией нашего озера Issyk-Kul. Спасибо за внимание.
Спасибо большое, уважаемый Замирбек Кубанычевич. И далее для приветственного слова позвольте пригласить Мощу Наталью Вячеславовну, регионального директора регионального отделения Международного союза игросвязи для СНГ. Наталья Вячеславовна, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Доброе утро, уважаемые коллеги. Мы видим, что участников форума набирается. Я надеюсь, что все уместятся в нашем зале. Уважаемый Замирбек Кубанычевич, уважаемый Нуридин Сайдинович, уважаемые коллеги, дамы и господа, представители стран региона СНГ, мы очень рады приветствовать всех вас с сегодняшнего форума, регионального форума МСТ для региона СНГ по цифровой трансформации. И, как вы отметили, конечно, многие из нас уже не раз присутствовали, посещали живописные такие просторы Issyk-Куля. Я думаю, что выражу такое общее мнение и искреннюю признательность Кыргызской республики, Министерству цифрового развития за приглашение провести форум сегодняшний здесь, в это прекрасное местности. И хотелось бы, конечно, поприветствовать и наших онлайн-участников, которых тоже зарегистрировано достаточно много. Надеюсь, что они также смогут полноценно участвовать в работе нашего форума. Уважаемые коллеги, вы знаете, что многие из вас участвовали в Всемирной конференции по развитию электросвязи, которая прошла в июне прошлого года. Вы знаете, что конференция приняла приоритетные направления в области развития электросвязи и, включая, в частности, для нашего региона, были приняты региональные инициативы. По предложению стран и по решению конференции среди 5 региональных инициатив отдельно выделено такое направление, как создание благоприятной законодательной и регуляторной среды для ускорения цифровой трансформации. в рамках этого направления конкретно принято решение, дано указание, в том числе секретариату МС, оказывать содействие государствам-членам МС в регионе в разработке законодательства, нормативно-правовой базы, а также цифровых услуг в различных секторах экономики, стимулирование инноваций, расширение обмена информацией и укрепление сотрудничества в области регулирования, тем самым способствуя развитию и созданию благоприятной нормативной среды. И задача сегодняшнего форума, в частности, это постараться ответить или начать диалог в этом направлении по данному запросу и предоставить всем участникам сегодняшнего форума, представителям государственных МС, членам секторов, которые сегодня участвуют в форуме, дать такой обзор и более подробную, глубокую информацию, касающуюся подходов цифровой трансформации, создания стратегии цифрового развития и факторов, которые влияют на принятие соответствующих решений с фокусом на регуляторику, на развитие, оценку регуляторной среды, которую реализует Международный союз электросвязи, принятие соответствующих регуляторных решений для содействия развитию инфраструктуры, и особое внимание мы постарались уделить вопросам сбора, анализа, использования данных и ИКТ-статистики. И при формировании этой программы мы, конечно, ориентировались не только на задачи региональной инициативы 3, о которой я сказала выше, но и на многочисленные запросы, которые мы получаем в последнее время от администрации связи нашего региона. Конкретно по этим вопросам мы с вами работаем на двухсторонней основе, но тем не менее мы полагаем, что проведение такого регионального форума, совместного обсуждения этих вопросов будет содействовать донесению той экспертизы, которая имеет МС, до всех стран региона и проведению такого более полноценного обмена мнениями и информацией. Как вы видите по программе форума, в рамках программы будут выступать как представители администрации связи стран региона, вы, так и представители, эксперты Международного союза электросвязи, в основном будут выступать онлайн и здесь в зале по конкретным тематическим направлениям, и мы приглашаем вас быть активными, задавать вопросы в чате Zoom, да, мы постараемся ответить на все те вопросы, которые вы поднимете. Поэтому очень надеемся, что вот такой комплексный подход позволит всем участникам сегодняшнего форума сформировать более такой развернутый, широко отвлекающий процесс, поделиться вашим видением, вашими решениями, сложностями и, конечно же, получить такие новые, прикладные знания в рамках сессий форума. Программа очень насыщена. Мы очень рады, что мы данный форум проводим в сотрудничестве с региональным содружеством в области связи. И надеемся, что вот такое совмещение наших мероприятий на одной площадке позволит объединить больше наших участников и дать возможность более качественно проводить обсуждения. На этом я желаю всем нам плодотворной работы и возвращаю слово нашему модератору. Спасибо большое.
Уважаемая Наталья Вячеславовна, за приветственное слово. И, как вы уже сказали, мы проводим это мероприятие совместно, back-to-back с мероприятием регионального содружества в области связи. И очень приятно пригласить для приветственного слова Нуруддина Насреддиновича Мухиддинова, генерального директора исполнительного комитета регионального содружества в области связи. Пожалуйста, вам слово.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги, уважаемый Фарид, большое спасибо за предоставленную возможность всех поприветствовать здесь, потому что я тоже с вчерашнего дня на этой прекрасной земле, жемчужине Кыргызстана, Issyk-Kul, это то место, на котором принимаются самые правильные, самые нужные, самые актуальные решения, уважаемые уважаемые коллеги. Я абсолютно уверен, что те предыдущие докладчики, которые говорили о важности и роли цифровой трансформации, они, наверное, этого тоже недостаточно, потому что мы будем еще несколько дней говорить о роли цифровой трансформации, которая на сегодняшний день является главным двигателем экономики страны. Если мы несколько лет назад говорили о цифровой трансформации, в первую очередь подразумевали это цифровизацию наших каналов связи у телекоммуникационщиков, то сегодня цифровая трансформация – это внедрение цифровых технологий во всех отраслях экономики. И очень наглядно все задачи, которые перед нами поставила Генассамблея ООН еще в 2015 году, это цели устойчивого развития, ЦУР 2030. Я думаю, что здесь нет человека, который не знал бы, сколько этих все эти 17 целей направлены на то, что мы должны... Мы сейчас находимся на середине пути. Если вы от 30 отнимете 15, то как раз 23 год – это середина. Это уже начало к движению к финишу, когда в 30 году наши государства будут отчитываться, какой рейтинг они занимают в целях устойчивого развития по их реализации. И сегодняшняя наша задача и Международного союза электросвязи, и задача регионального сотрудничества, которая имеет также в своих рядах комиссию по развитию информационного общества и цифровой трансформации. Это задачи, которые мы обсуждаем на заседаниях Совета глав администрации связи. Это задачи, которые мы обсуждаем на Совета операторов электросвязи, который ожидается у нас в Минске в октябре, и мы также на экспертном совете Межпарламентской ассамблеи региональное сотрудничество связи обязательно уделяем особое внимание и будет рассматриваться на очередном заседании Совета РСС, экспертный совет МПА, это внедрение закона об искусственном интеллекте. То есть сегодняшняя наша тема – это тема, которая нужна не только для связистов, не только для телекоммуникационщиков, не только для Министерства цифрового развития и Международного союза электросвязи. Это темы, которые нужны для внедрения во всех отраслях экономики. Я думаю, что сегодняшняя добрая атмосфера, обстановка, которая создана нашими уважаемыми друзьями из Министерства цифрового развития Кыргызстана и службы связи, они обеспечат нам принятие всех решений и тех, кто находится в режиме онлайн, те, которые смогли возможность приехать сюда, на Issyk-Kul, обеспечить принятие всех необходимых решений, рекомендаций для продвижения цели устойчивого развития в нашем регионе. Желаю всем успешной работы. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо большое, уважаемый Нарезин Срединович. Да, не работает. Работает. Ага. Мы на этом церемонии открытия, в принципе, подошла к концу. Большое спасибо всем нашим высокоуровневым участникам за приветственное слово. И как модератор первой сессии, наверное, сразу же буду и переходить к первой сессии нашего мероприятия. Наша первая сессия называется «Благоприятные условия для цифровой трансформации». Мы поговорим про то, какие инструменты есть у тех, кто формирует государственную политику, кто занимается отраслевым регулированием для стимулирования развития информационно-коммуникационных технологий. Как обычно, мы, наверное, сфокусируемся на подключении неподключенных, так как правило, это такая самая трудная задача, которую решают наши уважаемые министерства, уважаемые регуляторы. И вот про это попробуем поговорить в ближайшие полтора часа. Мне очень приятно пригласить для первой презентации мою коллегу, мою коллегу с ключевой презентацией Софи Мэдженс, исполнительной обязанности руководителя департамента цифровых знаний. Бюро развития электросвязи МСС Софи расскажет нам про разработку национальной стратегии цифровой трансформации, какие цели ставить, что нужно учесть, как добиться успеха. Sophie, I hope you can hear us and we can see your slides and please go ahead.
Good morning, and very delighted to join you today. I apologize for the darkness. It's a little bit early where I am here, so really happy to join you today. So my presentation today, and I hope that Irina, colleagues can share my presentation on the screen, because I will briefly outline the necessary steps and essential elements to be considered when developing a national digital transformation strategy. We will examine what needs to be achieved, why it is important, and how to do it. It's based, and my dear colleague Natalia mentioned the tools, it's based on the National Digital Transformation Strategy article, one of the articles which we have available on the ITU World Bank Digital Regulation Platform. We have the handbook and platform and training that provides guidance to policymakers, regulators, and entities dealing with digital transformation. In this presentation, and indeed in the following days, we will also address the need for foundational elements for digital transformation strategies to be implemented successfully, including collaborative, forward-looking, effective, and agile institutional and regulatory frameworks and approaches, effective financing mechanisms, and the importance of ICT data availability for informed decision-making. And I'm delighted to have many of my colleagues who will join online. I will continue with my presentation in the hope that the presentation will come up. If not, the presentation will be shared with you so that you have access to the various tools and links. Let's just look at digital transformation because we talked about it and my colleagues talked about it as well. It's a journey which started with technological innovation, digitalization, market liberalization since the dawn of mobile and the internet. The role ICTs play in our modern societies and economies and in the acceleration of digital only increased over time. In the 1990s, we saw the age of data, and that brought an enormous increase in the capacity to manage, store, process, and transmit voice, videos, and images. The evolution of computing, improved data management, and the expansion of the transmission and switching facilities over the previous 20 years had radically changed the structure of the worldwide telecommunication network. The evolving generation networks, mobile devices with built-in digital and video cameras, and innovative internet applications ushered in the area of consumer services. With it came industry calls for lighter touch regulation to let innovation flourish. There was also, and is also, increased industry collaboration to harmonize standards and boost access through globally interoperable services. Today, we see that digital impacts on all sectors and aspects of our lives. Think of e-health, e-agriculture, e-education, and e-government services, innovation opportunities for value creation, and the skills needed for adoption and the infrastructure for access. We saw with the pandemic that the digital transformation process was even more accelerated. This means that as policymakers and regulators, we all need to keep abreast of new approaches, new tools, skill up, adapt institutional frameworks and approaches, speed up and streamline regulatory processes. We also need to enhance collaboration. Although the regulatory basics still apply and core regulatory mandates still need to be thoughtfully used, the jobs of regulators requires new skills and new thinking to create an enabling environment, attract investment, ensure access for all, and all of this in a safe, secured, and informed manner. So governments worldwide are increasingly putting digital transformation at the front and center of their policy agendas to drive social development and economic prosperity. But digital transformation is not happening at the same pace in all countries, with some advancing more rapidly, while others are still in the early stages of adoption. So we in ITU have what we call the G5 benchmark, in which we have various stages of readiness, going from limited readiness to transitioning countries, to advanced countries, and leading countries. We saw in 2022 that at least 50% of all countries worldwide had adopted digital strategies covering multiple economic sectors, including in the CIS region, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, the Russian Federation, and one is in the process of being adopted, Belarus, according to our data. And we will talk about the data, the ICT regulatory survey and the tariff survey in later presentations today. So what are the characteristics of a national digital transformation strategy? It's a complex process involving multiple stakeholders and their interests, covering various domains such as healthcare, education, transportation, energy, environment, governance, and others. So there is the need for significant investment and the need to address complex ethical and legal issues and demands continuous adaptation to remain relevant in an ever-changing digital landscape. That's why a carefully prepared digital transformation strategy can serve as a guide, provide a decision-making framework, and help to prioritize national objectives, guide resource allocation towards desired outcomes. It can also help navigate uncertainties. But for that, the strategy needs to be coherent, comprehensive and holistic, inclusive, empowering, human-centered, collaborative, data-driven and evidence-based, ambitious but feasible, measurable, and agile. If we look at the cycle of digital transformation strategy development, there's no unique and universal strategic plan, and it has to be tailored to each country's specific setting, including its political, social, and economic context, its leadership, culture, and the overall complexity of the ecosystem and other factors. So it will represent a unique mix of experiences, ideas, tools, and available resources. But it should follow a cycle that is composed of 4 phases: initiation, development, implementation, and last but not least, of course, monitoring and evaluation. And depending on the readiness of a country and whether the strategy already exists, the development cycle of a digital transformation strategy can serve as a useful checklist guiding tool for each of the phases. And again, this is available in the article and in the presentation, which I'm sure the team will share with you. Let's start with phase 1, the initiation. The purpose of this phase is to develop an initial understanding among key decision makers, leaders, and stakeholders about the importance of the overall strategic planning effort and the main planning tasks, and to organize and guide efforts aimed at creating a national digital transformation strategy. And excuse me, but that's not the right presentation. But we can share it. I'll keep on talking and we can share it afterwards. Looking at the foundational elements of the initiation, we need to ensure political will and political support at the highest level. One needs to establish strategic and collaborative governance frameworks that support effective collaboration and ensures intragovernmental and intersectoral coordination and collaboration, and establishes clear processes, roles, and responsibilities of all involved parties. That is fundamental for the initiation of a national digital transformation strategy. Within the strategic collaborative governance framework, it's important to select the leading institution or body. It's important to establish clear processes, roles, and responsibilities of all involved parties. And it's important to define the intergovernmental and intersectoral coordination and collaboration. This is now the right presentation, and it's slide number 8. If you want to click to slide number 8, that's the one that says phase 1 initiation that I just talked to. So if you go through that, I can wait just a minute. So it's slide number 8. Yeah, I'll just keep on talking in the interest of time. So I talked about the initiation, which had the ensuring the political will and political support, the establishing the strategic governance, collaborative and governance framework. But then in the initiation, it's also important to prepare and approve the digital transformation strategy formulation plan. For that, you need to identify the key elements to formulate the plan, so the main steps, the timelines, and the human and the financial requirements. You need to identify the main stakeholders, including key governance bodies that bring together multiple stakeholders in some form of collaborative governance to foster a sense of ownership. There needs to be ownership within the group. There needs to be collaboration with the group, and obviously partnership among stakeholders. And that's where you can talk about a whole of government approach or a whole of society approach. And you can consider that in your formulation plan. And then there should also be the approval of the formulation plan. It should be approved by a steering committee and or a government entity in accordance with your administrative and legal culture. So then we go to the second phase, which is actually the strategy formulation. So once you've gone through the initiation, you start formulating the strategy. And obviously there, prepare for success. How do you prepare for success? Is by mapping the existing documents and initiatives to ensure coherence and consistency with existing or upcoming national strategic documents and initiatives, as well as regional and international policy objectives and commitments. You could conduct a strategic analysis to identify the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats, looking at the digital trends, the digital maturity, and the digital landscape. It's also important to engage multiple stakeholders. A comprehensive strategy is by definition a broad strategy, and that by definition includes many actors and stakeholders. And a key element of a successful strategy is to involve and coordinate all concerned government actors and non-governmental stakeholders to develop that digital transformation strategy. A key is to engage the stakeholders from the very early stages of the strategy and policy development. Multi-stakeholder cooperation brings tangible benefits that lead to better policies and outcomes and improves the quality of rulemaking through ideas, expertise, and evidence from stakeholders. And again, it's that sense of ownership. So then the strategy formulation, you prepare for success, and then you formulate. In the formulation, there are a number of elements that you can take into consideration. You articulate a clear, ambitious, but feasible plan. So you want to be aspirational and ambitious, but yet you're grounded in the reality. You want to have an achievable, general, and meaningful plan. Then you want to set clear priorities and strategic objectives, again grounded in the political, social, and economic and environmental context. So when you establish the objectives, a smart approach can help establish goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Smart. And you want to also identify key enablers that facilitate digital transformation across all economic sectors and social areas. Then you also want to define operational governance and coordination and consultation. So once developed, you want to be able to implement the strategy, and that again requires more operational coordination. And that's often ensured by actors directly involved in implementation. For example, chief digital officers, implementing ministries and agencies. And effective coordination is not only a function of responsibility, but also of practical coordination arrangements. And there's two types of those coordination arrangements. You can have a coordination group or committee, and then consultations. The groups mostly consist of government actors only. But in terms of coordination groups, contrary to coordination groups, consultations are rather one-off events or processes that serve a specific coordination task. And there, commonly, you have multiple actors and stakeholders. Then you want to determine strategic metrics, called key performance indicators, and expected outcomes. You want to create a roadmap to ensure that the strategy is translated into actionable steps, and then ensure strategic monitoring and evaluation. And let's not forget, digital transformation is not a one-time exercise, but a continuous process. So digital transformation planning is also about continuous monitoring. If we then go to phase 3, ensuring implementation, and I'm actually already on slide number 12, you want to translate strategy into operational reality through short-term plans, which include adjustments, refinements, and ongoing improvement to the digital transformation strategy. Then you want to ensure proper funding, secure commitments, and create incentives. And for that, you have a range of financial instruments and mechanisms: state aid, venture capital, public-private co-financing mechanisms, etc. You also want to communicate and engage to provide a clear understanding of the strategy's purpose and significance. And then you want to skill up through education and training, because you need to acknowledge the significance of digital skills and education as a foundation for achieving the strategic objectives. And governments and regulators need to take a proactive role in creating a pipeline of skills and competencies. Last but not least, the fourth phase, but again, it's a cycle of iteration, is the monitoring and evaluation. And it's important to establish the formal monitoring and evaluation network and framework. During the monitoring phase, the focus is on assessing if and to what extent the implementation of the strategy aligns with the initial plan. And in the evaluation plan phase, the assessment of the strategy's relevance shall be made, and if needed, the necessary adjustments determined. But what the framework needs to clearly define is the process, the roles and responsibilities, the evaluation, the clear schedule for evaluation, and how to incorporate the evaluation results into the planning cycle. If you look at the government of Netherlands, for example, they update their national digitalization strategy and have done so every year since 2018, when the initial Dutch digitalization strategy was launched. And all updates review the results of the past year and reflect on new and upcoming trends. And it's the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy that drives the process. To conclude my presentation, I've given some examples of our tools, because dear Natalia talked about the tools and the publications that we have available. So again, you'll see the links to the tools that we have in the Regulatory and Market Environment Division, and other colleagues from the department. So colleagues from the data and other colleagues will also be talking to you later over the next few days. So the presentation includes the link to the digital regulation platform, to our tools, and of course to the digital transformation article, because as we said, digital transformation is complex and rough. It's a journey. It requires smart strategies, smart implementation, and the right outcome-oriented collaborative mindset. Governments and policymakers and regulators can act as the stewards of digital transformation, but all parts of society must collaborate to ensure the greatest chance of success. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude my presentation. I'm sure our colleagues, I think you saw a glimpse of the presentation, but we will definitely share it with you so that you can have a look at it. And of course, if you have any questions, we are all available to answer any questions and to assist you as appropriate. Thank you very much.
Да.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Let me just share my screen and you'll let me know if you can see them well. Can you see my screen? Yes, you can see my screen? I don't hear anything.
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, great. Well, my presentation this morning will add to what my colleague Sophie just said. I'm going to be looking at the regulation for digital transformation, looking at some of the outcomes of the Global Symposium for Regulators that was held in June in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt this year. So regulators participating in the 22nd Global Symposium for Regulators recognize the importance of defining regulatory and economic incentives to stimulate the deployment of digital infrastructure everywhere, in particular in rural and unserved and underserved areas, and adopted therefore best practice guidelines on regulatory and economic incentives for an inclusive, sustainable digital future. These guidelines encourage policymakers and regulators to introduce emerging digital technologies to foster innovative business models, address regional and global challenges, and accelerate sustainable digital transformation. The best practice guidelines are one of the main outcomes of the Global Symposium for Regulators. So let's take a closer look at some of these incentives, starting with those to achieve meaningful connectivity. To ensure a competitive environment in all layers of the digital ecosystem by providing incentives for incumbent, new entrants, and startup is critical to bring new solutions and technologies to the market to meet national connectivity goals. This could include, for example, establishing safe spaces for experimentation and innovation, such as sandboxes and test beds. If you look at universal service and access, policymakers and regulators could consider incentives for network deployment in rural and underserved areas that may include subsidized grants, low interest loans, loan guarantees, reducing regulatory fees, introducing fee exemptions such as custom waivers on import duties, for example, or giving tax breaks for investors or tax holidays. If we look at another option, that is to broadening the base of contributors, taking into consideration the characteristics of markets and new developments is also an incentive to consider, along with facilitating last mile solutions to connect the unconnected. Regarding supporting access, adoption, and use, well, policymakers and regulators are encouraged to implement regulatory and financial incentives to bring the benefits of meaningful connectivity to everyone, everywhere. And these include, for example, demand-side interventions to be considered as part of universal service policies or other mechanisms to promote literacy and advance digital skills and foster the development and adoption of relevant and local content and solutions to enhance local livelihood and business opportunities. They can also encourage and facilitate cost reduction in the manufacturing, purchase, and importation of hardware equipment and incentives to foster adoption of digital services and devices that include special rates, for example, for low-income population. Regulators and policymakers can also play an important role in facilitating educational and a wide range of digital skills programs in schools, especially for young generations, as well as training for the elderly and including rural, unserved, and underserved population in vulnerable situations. Policymakers and regulators can also play a key and complementary role in their autonomy by engaging with all stakeholders to identify the changes and levers that are needed to take national, regional, and global digital transformation readiness to the next level. Regulatory coordination in the digital landscape reinforce legal and institutional frameworks for collaboration that outline the processes, the mechanisms, and tools to be used across sectors and across parts of the government. And as Sophie previously mentioned, it is about collaboration among the different institutions. And in this digital transformation process, collaboration is the name of the game. You can also look at inclusive decision-making cycle. So for example, foster regular dialogues across government authorities, sectors, and stakeholders group to ensure that stakeholders' engagement on key development in the digital markets is carried out, again, through public consultations, stakeholders forums, and collaboration networks and platforms. Again, stakeholders' engagement is key in driving digital transformation. Data and benchmark, Sophie also pointed to that. Regulators need to have the resources and the capacity to collect relevant data to support their decisions in an open and transparent manner, and to establish metrics and benchmarks to measure regulatory compliance and also progress towards achieving connectivity targets and policy goals. They further need to have internal research capacity and resources to explore and anticipate market trends, regulatory challenges, and the impact of new technologies on their national economies. And aligning their policies, regulation, and national standards, with relevant international standards and guidelines to foster a harmonized approach to regulation is further key areas, and it enables coordinated response across border to address the issues across between countries, within countries as well. So these guidelines were adopted complement those that were previously adopted and that are part of the gold standard of digital regulation, as we call them. They require to look beyond regulating within the traditional sector sectoral frameworks. So the following elements are some of the core collaborative regulation best practice guidelines that are, as I've already mentioned, space for digital experimentation, pro-competition frameworks, regulatory incentives, as we've just seen, stakeholder engagement again, robust and enforceable mechanism for consumer protection, market-based and dynamic mechanism for spectrum management, regulatory impact assessment, agile, data-driven monitoring solutions, effective channels for dynamic collaboration among stakeholders and among regulators and policy makers. Policies and strategies can trigger the multiplier effect of digital by providing predictability and direction. These best practice guidelines, these gold standards for collaborative regulation, enabled us are based on data, and they enable us to make decision making to support decision making decisions. So, as I mentioned earlier, and as Sophie also touched to it, regulators and policymakers need evidence to inform their decision that helps them compare practices across countries and regions against a universal reference frame for regulatory excellence and good governance. So this is where the ITU developed the concept of the generations of regulation. It's a model, as I said, that is based on gold standards of digital regulation and that enables them to do just that, use evidence to make decisions. So over the past 3 decades, 5 generations of regulations have driven forward both the telecom market and digital technologies market. So each new generation has blended into the pre-existing landscape, starting with command and control state-owned structures, generation 1, through market liberalization, privatization, and the separation of the policymaking and regulatory functions of government, which represents generation 2, Important core policy and regulation changes for liberalized market, competition and licensing frameworks, and the enabling of spectrum regulation that impose Generation 3 to integrated telecom regulation that is Generation 5. Generations 1 through 4 have gradually shaped the telecom market, while in parallel, making their way through Generation 5, countries have been climbing the digital transformation ladder at a different pace, from limited to transitioning to advanced to leading, while advancing telecommunication regulatory reform. So holistic and harmonized approach can deliver great impact. The regulatory evolution to leading digital transformation readiness, the G5 benchmark, is about adopting a more holistic mindset shifting from telecom ICT sector-centric to the digital economy at large. And my colleague Yulia Lotsanova will tell you more about the regulatory survey and how we developed these two benchmarks, the ICT tracker and the digital transformation readiness G5 benchmark. So where do we stand? There is uneven development in the level of maturity of policy and regulatory frameworks, both between and within regions. While 90% of European countries are in the G4 generation, fewer than a quarter of countries in the other regions have achieved an enabling environment for telecom and ICT markets. And as we can see, countries in the CS region are in G2, G1, and G4. So the development of digital policy, legal and regulatory frameworks across and within region, as I said, is really marked unevenly. Given the broad range of issues, regulators, other relevant government authorities, industries, and other key stakeholders. Government need to establish mechanisms, whether formal or informal, to collaborate with industry and consumer groups on setting policies, rules, and guidelines. So the level of collaboration among sectors is differ. In traditional areas such as competition and spectrum management, 4 and 5 ICT regulators engage with their counterparts, mainly through formal channels. Collaboration remains less established with data protection and financial regulators, for example. The transition to an all IP world means that laws, policies, and regulation need to evolve to maintain fair competition. Regulators must also collaborate with one another and with competition authorities to ensure consistent and effective regulation, as well as digital platforms. If we look at data protection authorities and other sector-specific regulators, collaboration is key to create properly scoped and harmonized digital regulation and respond to the issues that are arising from the digital economy. 60% of ICT regulators now collaborate beyond their traditional sector with ministries of education, health, and government services. In 70% of countries, coordination and collaboration have increased between the ICT regulator and the national agency that is driving digital transformation. I will just reiterate some of the tools and products that you can find on this slide that are the outcome of the work we've been doing in the Regulatory and Market Environment Division. And again, I would like to conclude by saying that cross-sectoral and cross-regional collaboration is critical to promote digital transformation. And again, this collaboration involves government, businesses, civil societies, and other stakeholders that all need to work together. Thank you very much.
И вот с прошлого года акты гражданского самоуправления также процесс пересмотрен, вся регистрация рождения, получается, акты о смерти, так полностью автоматизировано, как бы по ходатайству вы можете получить бумажное видео, но это все автоматизировано и появляется в личном кабинете электронного правительства. Другой пример, вот приложение банка второго уровня сейчас большим спросом пользуется вот оформление авто. Удобно, достаточно легко, вы можете купить, продать автомобиль, не подключая специальное ценное обслуживание населения. Там банки используют государственные базы данных для регистрации. Данные имеются в базах данных, нет смысла что-то предоставлять. Оплата происходит онлайн, и государственная база данных автовладельца автоматизирует владелец. Это очень удобно. А другой пример, цифровая банки, которые строительные компании, получается, за эти деньги вы можете оформить ипотеку, тоже, получается, здесь исключается человеческий фактор. Раньше в отделении были департаменты, которые проверяли вашу должность, можете ли вы вообще оплатить, это все происходит автоматически, потому что все здесь в информационных системах, ваша кредитная история, все автоматически проверяется, и за один день вы можете получать среднее на ипотеку. Также другое новшество, вот мы запустили цифровой нотариат, также вот доверенность сейчас удаленно, используя SSID, нотариусы, вот заявители через видеосвязь. Чтобы это правильно реализовать, мы, соответственно, также назначили цифровых специалистов, которые уже под отчеты нашего министерства, мы как бы совместно с ними координируем задачи. Через наше министерство мы им ставим KPI по развитию цифровых проектов по их отраслям. В целом, вот, мы понимаем, что любая трансформация требует бюджета, и также совет нашей администрации президента, у нас большая работа этих услуг бюрократизации, мы также прописали такую норму, если база данных имеет виды сведения, то государство не имеет права запрашивать информацию у граждан, бизнеса, они должны подтянуть информационных систем. У нас идет принцип цифровизация по умолчанию. Много что можно рассказать, но так как регламент, я могу ответить.
Название, не говорит о Казахстане, и секрет уже, что на Либлабрид планируем подписать меморандум с министерством о вступлении в наш большой проект, который направлен на
приглашают принять участие в Visual Bridge, который проходил 12-13 февраля в Астане, и подключиться к этой программе. Очень планы, спасибо большое за ваше выступление. И далее я хочу передать слово Дмитрию Орду, начальнику управления Министерства связи и информатизации Республики Беларусь.
Смотрите, да, понимаю, это для микрофона. Правильно?
Очень важная встреча.
Да, понял. Я тоже, нет, тоже попробовал, но вообще нет.
Ну, начну свое выступление. Еще раз напомню, что указом 136 прошлого года Министерство связи...
Ну, давайте потом, сейчас уже идет.
Рядом полномочий,
пока нормально идет. Переключаюсь.
Информационных систем ресурсов, определение идеологической политики, архитектуры, требований к присоединению к ним, информационным системам. Для практического сопровождения вопросов цифрового развития сегодня уже создан Центр цифрового развития и Центр перспективных исследований на базе наших государственных предприятий, подчиненных Министерству связи. Наших государств. Изменено и расширено механизм финансирования процессов поддержки процессов цифровизации страны и возможности внедрения уже разработанных программных продуктов. Хотел бы напомнить, мы все это знаем, что когда у нас есть государственная программа, это 50% успеха. Сегодня в Беларуси действует государственная программа цифрового развития Беларуси на 21-25 годы. Всего в сфере цифрового развития у нас существует 6 подпрограмм с общим финансированием на эти 5 лет 1,2 миллиарда долларов США. Из них это информационно-этическое, организационно-техническое сопровождение цифрового развития, инфраструктура цифрового развития, цифровое развитие государственного управления, цифровое развитие отрасли экономики, региональное цифровое развитие, информационная безопасность и цифровое доверие. Что касается развития инфраструктуры цифрового развития, мы все тут говорим об государственных услугах, их развитие, увеличение количества разных вариантов получения таких услуг гражданам и бизнесом, да. Но, на мой взгляд, основная основа для получения таких услуг является опережающее развитие информационной инфраструктуры для того, чтобы такие услуги были доступны в любом месте, где не находился наш гражданин, либо была точка бизнеса. Поэтому в нашей этой подпрограмме инфраструктуры цифрового развития в принципе предусмотрены два таких основных направления совершенствования национальной информационной инфраструктуры и услуг, оказанных на ее основе. Это развитие услуг стационарного широкополосного доступа к услугам строительства волоконно-оптических линий. И второе – это развитие услуг беспроводного широкополосного доступа на основе дальнейшего строительства сети высокой подвижной связи по технологии 4G. Общий объем финансирования на 5 лет двух данных программ оценивается порядка 1 миллиарда долларов США. И хотел бы в цифрах рассказать, чего мы достигли и с какими проблемами мы сейчас столкнулись, и примерно предложить варианты их решения. При населении 9,2 миллиона человек у нас 3,6 тысяч миллионов. Из них 70% домохозяйств у нас подключено к оптоволокну. По данному параметру мы занимаем второе место в Европе, нас опережает только Исландия. У нас очень интересный показатель был достигнут. На 1 января этого года у нас абонентов беспроводного доступа стало больше, чем количество населения страны. Это очень интересный показатель, и вместе с ним коррелирует показатель того, что люди начинают отказываться от услуг фиксированной связи. И мобильная связь уже достаточно хорошо развита по всей территории. Люди видят сигнал, но есть одна проблема, которую чуть позже остановлюсь, это проблема качества получаемых услуг посредством сети. Ширина внешнего канала у нас достигла 2037 гигабит в секунду. Мы завершаем проект по подключению всех стационарных абонентов к АМС-платформе. Сегодня 3760
3 миллиона 760 тысяч домохозяйств уже к ней подключены, что составляет порядка 93%. До конца года мы увеличим процент до 95, и до 2025 года, в принципе, вся абонентская база стационарно у нас будет на INT-платформе. У нас 2,5 миллиона абонентов IPTV, абонентов сотовой связи у нас 11 миллионов 756 тысяч, и по уровню проникновения у нас составляет 47%, то есть мы где-то находимся в средних таких мировых параметрах, по данному параметру. И в чем сегодня состоит одна основная проблема, на наш взгляд, по доступу граждан и бизнеса к современным услугам. Мы можем с вами сделать хоть 1000 государственных услуг, но если они будут доступны нашим гражданам и бизнесу только в пределах административной территории нашей столицы, крупных областных центров, это услуги никому не надо. Сегодня, можно сказать, уже идет некий процесс деурбанизации жительства, то есть пандемия показала очень такой тренд интересный, когда стала востребована удаленная работа, и люди начали друг от друга, скажем, стремиться находиться на расстоянии. По опыту Беларуси очень много выехало в сельскую местность, это и садовое товарищество, и мелкие населенные пункты, и пытались работать, и пытаются, и во многом случае это удается, но иногда есть проблемы. Удаленная работа. И мы этот процесс наблюдаем. Поэтому у нас вроде бы прекрасные цифры по покрытию. Вот, например, мы берем от покрытия 3G составляет 98,6% территории, 4G 83,2% территории. То, что касается населения, охват населения на 3G 99,9%, а 4G 98%. Но сегодня основная проблема, опять я хотел бы отметить, это проблема качества получаемых услуг. Мы пытаемся понять, что надо делать с мобильным. У нас в социальной программе есть мы до конца 2025 года отключим которые насчитывают от 50 до 100 домохозяйств. Дальше экономические идти оптоволокном уже нет проблему по последней мере решать за счет радиотехнологий. Поэтому у нас сегодня есть большой прирост по оптоволокну, это 6
Да, добрый день. Слышу вас хорошо. Как меня слышно? Прекрасно. Добрый день, уважаемые участники мероприятия. Сегодня я вам буду немножко рассказывать про то, чем мы занимаемся в Международном союзе электросвязи в плане картирования инфраструктуры широкополосного доступа, а также использования этой информации в проектах по подключению школ и других объектов. Я начну свою презентацию. Так. Которая называется «Создание карты широкополосного доступа от сбора данных до моделирования подключений». И начну я в первую очередь с причин тестирования цифровой инфраструктуры, которая сводится к следующему. Первое – это необходимость комплексного планирования развития новой инфраструктуры. Для того, чтобы планировать ее развитие, нужно знать, где расположены текущие элементы цифровой инфраструктуры и где этой инфраструктуры недостаточно, где она требует развития. Также это необходимо для обслуживания и модернизации существующей инфраструктуры, для необходимого распределения ресурсов, для того, чтобы обслуживать текущую инфраструктуру. Эффективно реагировать это позволяет эффективно реагировать на чрезвычайные ситуации, поскольку знание критических узлов, где они расположены, позволяет уделить больше внимания на то, чтобы резервировать их, усилить и при необходимости перенаправить трафик в случае чрезвычайных ситуаций. Также это влияет на повышение надежности и безопасности инфраструктуры путем обозначения уязвимых, потенциально уязвимых элементов инфраструктуры и способов реагирования на чрезвычайные ситуации. Также это позволяет, картирование инфраструктуры позволяет привлекать бизнес-инвестиции путем демонстрации готовности к развитию цифровых отраслей, эффективно распределять ресурсы на ее развитие, мониторить выполнение обязательств поставщиков услуг электросвязи, то есть как развивается инфраструктура, насколько выполняются возложенные при лицензировании обязательства. Это может содействовать развитию конкуренции, когда поставщики услуг электросвязи видят, где у них сети, допустим, развиты лучше, чем у конкурентов или хуже, чем у конкурентов, и планировать расширение своих сетей связи. А также служит для информирования потребителей о наличии той или иной инфраструктуры. Картирование инфраструктуры начинается со сбора данных, для чего мы используем различные источники, в том числе открытые данные, аппликации по развитию волоконно-оптических сетей, по покрытию мобильными сетями связи, спутниковые сети связи и другие источники данных, которые используются для того, чтобы их оцифровать и нанести карту. Также мы направляем запросы странам, запросы администрациям по предоставлению определенных данных в рамках проектов по подключению различных объектов или развития инфраструктуры в определенных регионах. И для того, чтобы эти данные собрать, мы определяем набор информации, который нам необходимо, то есть стандартизируем их, стандартизируем параметры и стандартизируем необходимые значит, типы данных, типы инфраструктуры и определяем форматы предоставления этих данных. Это существенно упрощает предварительную обработку этих данных и существенно упрощает их использование. Точность, с которыми эти данные могут предоставляться, она может разниться, то есть это могут быть данные в стране в целом, по определенным регионам, по населенным пунктам и далее по подключаемому объекту. Эта точность предоставления данных, она зависит от целей проекта, а также от наличия тех или иных данных, а также от готовности страны, администрации или поставщиков услуг электросвязи делиться этими данными. То есть это такой регулируемый параметр, который, в принципе, может отличаться по разрешению этих данных. То есть, но мы видим тенденцию в том, что возрастает необходимость в более локализованных данных, то есть необходимо знать, где и в каких районах, в каких локациях инфраструктура существует в наличии, где она необходима, и точность локализации для проведения анализа для определенных проектов, для планирования развития инфраструктуры, необходимость точности растет. Вот пример, допустим, типов данных, которые могут собираться, приведен на данной картинке. То есть если мы ставим целью моделирования покрытия сотовой связью, соответственно, вот эти все параметры, связанные с нисходящим, восходящим каналом, частотами, высотой антенн, мощностью передатчиков, шириной лучей, они все необходимы для моделирования покрытия мобильной связи. Что происходит далее с собранными данными? Они подвергаются предварительной обработке, то есть это устранение дупликатов, удаление данных, которые не содержат какие-то значения или значения выходят за диапазон, за рамки определенного диапазона, а также если, допустим, локализация не соответствует, инфраструктура не соответствует границам определенных регионов или стран, или, допустим, попадает в какие-то, содержит, в общем, ошибки. И потом следует форматирование этих данных, приведение к формату, который пригоден для обработки и дальнейшего анализа. И далее следует анализ и последующее моделирование новой развития инфраструктуры, моделирование возможной стоимости развития инфраструктуры и тому подобное. То есть на данной карте вот мы можем видеть результат моделирования подключения определенных объектов, которые обозначены зеленым цветом, к узлам связи посредством волоконно-оптических линий связи, которые построены вдоль дорожной инфраструктуры. Также моделирование, например, может включать определение, находятся ли объекты в зоне прямой видимости определенных антенно-мачтовых сооружений, для того, чтобы определить, возможно ли установление радиорелейных линий связи между этим мачтовым сооружением и определенным объектом. Это позволяет нам определить множество объектов, которые могут быть подключены с помощью существующей инфраструктуры и оценить стоимость этого подключения в дальнейшем. Публикация данных То есть результаты анализа, они обычно публикуются, и сами данные в том числе публикуются. Публикация данных возможна через использование различных репозиториев и веб-сайтов. Например, мы в Международном союзе электросвязи используем так называемый каталог геоинформационных данных, который основан на программном обеспечении с открытым исходным кодом. Вот этот каталог, в принципе, может использоваться любыми участниками. То есть тут он может быть развернут на собственных серверах в том числе. И сюда возможно подгружать различные типы данных. Допустим, вот мы делали тренинг для Бразилии и загружали сюда данные по инфраструктуре Бразилии, по расположению школ, по покрытию мобильными сетями связи. И вот эти все данные доступны в виде ссылок, на которые можно нажать, скачать. Можно также регулировать доступ к этим данным. То есть вот такой репозиторий. Это возможность публикации данных через такие репозитории. Точность публикуемых данных также может регулироваться. То есть, допустим, если есть необходимость уменьшить разрешение этих данных, не публиковать данные конкретно по объекту, можно представить эти объекты в виде определенной сетки, допустим, с разрешением 2 на 2 километра и опубликовать количество, допустим, высших антенно-мачтовых сооружений внутри конкретной ячейки, не публикуя конкретное местоположение. Мы также работаем над картами широкополосной инфраструктуры. Значит, у нас есть два типа карт. Первый тип карты — это информация, которая доступна которая находится в публичном доступе. И здесь, собственно, изображены результаты работы последних 10 лет по анализу волоконно-оптической инфраструктуры связи, наиболее крупных ее участков, которая собрана из различных открытых источников, из источников, которые были оцифрованы в публикации операторов, публикации администрации связи, а также информации, предоставленной этими администрациями связи, регуляторами. Здесь мы можем выбрать страну, допустим, и посмотреть, насколько детально, собственно, эта инфраструктура опубликована по каждой конкретной стране. И существует возможность, значит, включать и отключать определенные слои, менять количество информации, тип информации, отображаемый на определенной карте, в том числе, допустим, менять плотность населения, отображение плотности населения, чтобы была возможность прогнозировать спрос на определенную инфраструктуру. В общем, эта карта содержит различные слои с подобными данными. И вторая карта — это платформа для валидации данных, которая содержит информацию об источниках, используемых для того, чтобы эти, собственно, элементы инфраструктуры, которые были нанесены на предыдущую карту, не здесь указаны. Вот. Например, по Кыргызстану мы можем видеть ссылки и изначальную информацию, которая была использована. То есть здесь мы видим в большинстве своем это изображения, которые были привязаны к карте, из них были извлечены, из основных узлов были извлечены координаты, и они были картированы. То есть, ну, соответственно, понятно, что точность этих данных сводится к обозначению населенного пункта, в которых эти узлы находятся, то есть соответственно, точность вот этих координат сводится к тому, что мы обозначаем населенные пункты. Вот. И далее эти данные можно валидировать. Валидация происходит следующим образом. То есть если какой-либо оператор либо администрация связи видит неточность в этих данных, они могут связаться с нами непосредственно по почте указанной, либо по форме, которая здесь приведена. Вот. И каждая из этих карт, она показывает статус валидации того или иного элемента связи. Значит, МСЭП, Международный союз электросвязи, принимает участие и в том числе ведет различные инициативы по подключению школ, по подключению, по оценке устойчивости инфраструктуры и работает с различными экспертами, организациями, администрациями связи, международными отраслевыми организациями, консалтинговыми компаниями, а также производит в рамках некоторых проектов сбор данных в режиме реального времени. Например, в рамках проекта ГИГА мы устанавливаем совместно с ЮНИСЕФ программное обеспечение в определенные школы, где производится измерение текущего качества, показателей качества соединения. И в рамках этих проектов мы создаем карты подключения к сети интернет. Вот на настоящем слайде показана карта, допустим, для Казахстана, для которой приведены расположение школ, и они раскрашены в соответствии с удаленностью от волоконно-оптических сетей связи. Чем более светлый зеленый цвет, тем ближе они находятся к инфраструктуре. Также мы используем, то есть все эти карты можно посмотреть по этой ссылке, где можно переключать. Они интерактивные, то есть можно делать зум-ин, зум-аут, переключаться между слоями, посмотреть, допустим, количество населения, находящегося вокруг этих школ, что позволяет приблизительно оценить спрос на ту инфраструктуру, которая будет подведена к этим объектам. Вот. И мы также работаем над курсом по картированию широкополосной инфраструктуры, который доступен по приведенной ссылке. Первая часть его уже готова, то есть он в открытом доступе и может быть, соответственно, каждый человек может пройти этот курс. Мы готовим более продвинутые части в том числе. На этом у меня все. Спасибо за внимание. Недавно был... Да, на этом, наверное, я закончу, поскольку мне сигнализируют, что время вышло.
Доброе утро, коллеги. Слышно, видно меня? К сожалению, у меня, наверное, проблемы со звуком, я не слышу вас. So I will start my presentation. I hope you don't mind if I do it in English. I will start with some background information about myself. My name is Darius Stepanyan. I'm the head of International Cooperation Division of Public Services Regulatory Commission. I hope you can see my screen. My presentation will be about the regulatory experience of Republic of Armenia on broadband development in rural areas, and I will share the experience on how we reached the 100% 4G plus coverage in the Republic of Armenia. But first of all, I would like to start with presenting Public Services Regulatory Commission. It's not a typical European commission, which regulates only telecommunications sector. It's a multi-sector regulatory commission. It doesn't regulate only telecom, it regulates the energy, gas, water supply, and some part of the postal service. Secondly, I would like to present you the setting in Armenia, how the telecommunications sector is regulated. We have two main authorities. It is the Ministry of High-Tech Industry of the Republic of Armenia and PSRC. PSRC started regulation in 2006, and the tasks of the government and the regulator were divided. The ministry has the function of development policy of the sector, whereas PSRC is the independent regulator. So first of all, I would like to start with some information regarding the public mobile network coverage. In 2006, we had very limited coverage, as you can imagine. However, currently we already have 100% of all the settlements of Armenia covered with 3G and 4G plus coverage. As for 4G plus technology coverage, at least 91.4% of the settlements have mutual penetrable coverage of 2 operators, whereas with 3 operators, this indicator is 21.8, which concludes almost 76% of array population. So we can understand that the major cities are covered. And these indicators were ensured as a result of the fulfillment of obligations of licenses, which were issued by PSRC for the allocation of radio frequency auction winning. So, for example, here you can see our I'm sorry, but I have some issues. Our 3 major operators and the indicators of their coverage. So we have Team Telecom, Viva Telemtes, and UCOM. And each of them has a major percentage of coverage of the settlement of Armenia. I would like to state that in Armenia we have only 1,002 settlements. And almost all of them are covered with 3 operators, which means that everywhere you will have a coverage of at least 1 operator. So in 2008, the 3rd operator entered into the market, which was Orange Armenia, a French operator. And his investment in the market was around 250 million euros, which was a huge sum at that point. And, however, the average revenue per user, RPU, was $15 at that point. Currently, it's 5.5. It's quite better at the moment. And the license applications for the Orange Armenia were that in 2 years it has to ensure GSM coverage in Yerevan and cities. And in 3 years, the company was obliged to ensure GSM coverage in 200 settlements, as well as in 85% of the interstate roads. Which means that at the end of their obligations, we already had GSM coverage in 85% of the roads, as well as in the major cities of Armenia. In 2013, the Commission made a monitoring and understood that there are 80 settlements that have no coverage at all. Not an option, but a monitoring. Yeah, I'm sorry, but there is some missing with the translation. So I will start again. In 2013, the Commission made the monitoring and understood that in 18 settlements, there is no mobile network coverage. And as a result, we had 3 operators, and each of them was obliged to have coverage in 6 of the settlements. And at this moment, by January 2014, all area settlements were issued with mobile network coverage of at least 1 operator. In 2013, the Commission held an auction of the first of 800 megahertz. And the winner was UCOM, and it was obliged to ensure 80% of settlement within 2 years. And however, by analyzing what they had made, they understood that the obligation was not implemented. We had the choice to either fine them, which was not a big amount of money, or to have another kind of obligation, which would ensure the investment in the sector, as well as will enhance the network. And thus, we obliged them firstly to make the coverage in 85% of settlement, afterwards 88%. And at the end of their obligation, they already had the 88% of all the settlements covered with 4G. In 2019, we had the auction of second section of 800 megahertz, and the winner was MTS Armenia. And in this case, we already made the obligation to ensure the coverage in the remaining 12% of the settlement, which were not covered by that moment. And other 80% of the settlement, which will ensure the 80% of settlements are covered with the 2 operators. So in 2012, the Commission held an auction of 700 megahertz. And the winner was Telecom Armenia, and according to the license, the company has to ensure 80% of area settlements with the broadband coverage, and the most important, to ensure 5G technology in Yerevan and 2 other major cities. And at the same time, they have to ensure that 80% of the settlements are covered with 3 operators for coverage. And at the moment, this indicator is 21.8. So as we speak of fixed network coverage, in 2006, we had only 200 settlements which were insured with 6 fixed telephone access coverage. However, at the moment, all the settlements of Armenia are covered with wired or wireless technologies. Whereas if we speak of FTTX technology, you can see that 600 number are covered with FTTX technology, and this growth rate is around 10% per year or even more sometimes. And out of 206 licensed operators, 173 operate in the rural areas, which means that by this we try to enhance the network in the rural areas. So the actions which were developing fixed network coverage included the reduction of license fees, permit fees, as well as simplification of license procedure. All of this helped us to ensure that small operators also can operate in the Republic of Armenia. As well as we ensure the development of competition in the sector with the construction of fiber optic backbone networks. And the definition of license obligations established by the Commission regarding the development of the communication infrastructure and provision of access to technologies. And at the moment, we are trying to analyze how we can ensure the infrastructure sharing, but also ensure more operators entering into the market. In 2006, by the obligation set in by the incumbent operator, which was Omentel, and now it's Telecom Armenia, 370 settlements were insured with 60 CDMA wireless technology coverage. And in 2015, the company was obliged to provide 996 settlements CDMA coverage. And by this, by fulfilling those obligations enshrined in their permits, two major fixed telecom wholesale companies during 2013 and 18, around 50 settlements of the Republic of Armenia were insured with access to optical fiber network. So as a result of all these above mentioned activities, between 2000 and 23, IP transit capacity has increased by 13,000 times. Is a major number as we understand it. And between 2006 and 23, the price for 1 megabit second of IP transit capacity has decreased for 10,700 times. Here you can also see the capacity of used fixed broadband internet in exabit, which has also increased for 10.6 times between the past 8 years. And at the same time, the number of subscribers broadband services has increased to 274 times between the past 15 years. And the number of subscribers of broadband services in 2008 it has increased for 37 times. And I would like to state again that unfortunately Armenia at the moment doesn't have a policy development document. So all the actions implemented by the Commission were implemented on its own by analyzing the best practices of the European countries and the other countries which we met. So all of these activities were implemented in consultants with ITU experts or other experts with whom we had the connection. So this is how we were able to enhance the network in Armenia. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I think it's now good afternoon. So, as Irina said, I work at the Regulatory and Market Environment Division and of the Telecommunication Development Bureau at the ITU. And today I'm going to speak about the ICT Tariff Policy Survey. I just want to share my video. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's start. So the ICT Tariff Policy Survey tracks the latest trends in the application of national ICT regulatory, economic, and financial policies worldwide. The survey focuses on costing strategies and economic approaches to regulate telecommunication ICT services. It also addresses other topics from the economic and financial perspective, such as taxation of ICT services, international internet connectivity, infrastructure development and sharing, and I will speak this a little later. So regarding data collection, the tariff policy data is collected annually from the ICT national regulatory authorities around the world using the online questionnaire. This questionnaire is available from the ITU Data Hub. For that, the focal points from the regulatory authorities receive each year in June a message informing that the survey is open and reminding them the login information of their administration. To maintain the survey relevant, we update each year to reflect the changing ICT economic and financial market conditions. I would like to add here that we receive annually responses from around 150 countries over the 193 ITU member states. The percentage of participation from regions is very high. It is around 80 to 90% based on each region size. For the CIS region, the percentage is still a little low. So we encourage you to complete the ITU surveys, because we have many surveys, to get relevant information about the CIS region and better reflect your situation. It is important to provide us also with the focal point details in your administrations to keep our database updated. Please note that the deadline for the submission of the Tariff Policy Survey 2023 is the 15th September. Of course, we remain at your disposal if you have any question or regarding the content of the survey and the login information. Our generic email is on this slide, is tariff@itu.int. Let's see now about the survey. The survey is divided in 13 sections as follows. The first one is the contact information of the persons filling the survey to keep our database updated. Section 2 is on price regulation of telecommunication ICT services. This section covers the price control or regulation applied in the country for retail and wholesale services. This also includes broadcasting and OTT services. Section 3, cost and tariff models, is addressing fixed and mobile services. It includes questions about the cost methodology applied and all the cost elements, such as type of cost considered in the cost modeling, asset revaluation, annualization methods, network typology, and methods of allocation of common and joint costs for the different services. Section 4 is about interconnection issues. It deals with questions related to charging principles, asymmetry, mobile and fixed termination rates and transits. Section 5 is now empty, but a new section on digital economy will be added for the next year. Section 6 is taxation of telecommunication ICT services. This section addresses the different type of taxes that are being applied to ICT services, equipment, and devices, including sector-specific taxes and fiscal incentives. Section 7 is on infrastructure development and sharing. It considers passive and active sharing, regulatory obligations to share, and also the regulatory obligations to map existing infrastructure in different countries. Section 8 addresses the access to international facilities or international internet connectivity. It includes questions about the type of connection used to access international transit, average wholesale cost of international internet connectivity, and also the steps taken by countries to optimize the cost of international internet connectivity. Section 9 is related to the strategies applied for broadband service pricing. And Section 10 addresses the international mobile roaming, IMR. It describes the situation in the country, about the regulation of these services, the roaming information that is publicly available in the countries, and the national regulatory practices applied by countries. Then we have Internet of Things and machine-to-machine. Section 11 is a short section focusing on policy and regulation applied to these services. Section 12 on bundled services. In these sections, the questions focus on the regulation of these services and how regulatory authorities are determining the pricing of bundled services and costing methodologies applied. Then we have Section 13 on mobile virtual network operators, which asks questions about regulatory frameworks, operations in terms of commercial agreements, and the different types of MVNO operating in the country. So that is the structure of this survey. And now let's see how the data from the ICT Tariff Policy Survey is used. The data is used for the ITU study groups to support their work, especially for the groups working on regulatory and economic issues, such as the ITUD Study Group 1, question 4.1 on economic aspect of national telecommunication ICTs, and this ITU Study Group 3 on policy and economic issues. During last period, the question 4.1 published or developed 2 publications using the contributions from countries, but also using the data collected from the tariff policy survey, but also from the other surveys from ITU. We have in the room, our rapporteur is Mr. Arseny Plosky, who is with you there. I'm sure he will extend his experience, about working with question 4.1. I just would like to highlight the guidelines on cost modeling developed by this group, by question 4.1, which provide a specific practical step-by-step instructions to implement cost modeling solutions in your countries. And also the main report on the question on economic policies and methods of determining the cost of services related to national telecommunication ICT network. This report presents an excellent analysis of the contributions received from countries, but also from the data collected, as I said before. On the other side, we have also, we use the data for the development of research and publications, such as the economic impact of broadband, digitization and ICT regulation, taxation of digital services, economic impact of OTTs on national telecommunication ICT markets. Let me highlight here the report on the economic contribution of broadband digitization and ICT regulation for the CIS countries that is available also in Russian. We are preparing an update of this publication at global level that will be available by the end of the year. Irina, I have 3 minutes to show about the ITU Data Hub, or do you want me to stop here the presentation? Okay, I can see the messages. Sorry. I will try to show you quickly the ITU Data Hub. Can you see my screen? I don't know why I can, it is not possible.
Yes, yes, we can see.
You can see the Data Hub?
Data Hub, yeah.
Excellent. So here is the Data Hub. This survey, this database contains the information from 5 surveys. The first one is the household ICT indicators. The second one is the world telecommunication indicators. The third one is the price basket. The fourth one is the regulatory survey that my colleague Julia will present just after me. And the last one is the tariff policy survey. Here, when you go to the first page of the survey, you will have the information about the country where you are based. In this case, as I am based in Switzerland, you can see the information from Switzerland following the different topics of the survey. You also use the Data Explorer, which presents you the information at global level. In this sense, as you can see on my screen, we have the results from the world, but we can select a country and see the information from the country. In this case, we have Kyrgyzstan, and you can see the different results from the connectivity point, affordability, and governance situation. Then, in this page, indicator catalog, you can see the different indicators we have. We have more than 179 indicators distributed in 6 topics, which are connectivity, affordability, governance, markets, sustainability, and trust. Here you can find the information, as I told you, based on these topics. And then you can select and see the information you want to see, no? To learn about. In this case, for example, I show you quickly the international mobile roaming policies. Is one of the indicators that I showed you when I explained the distribution of the questionnaire. And here you have the information, for example, for internet policies, then the information about if the prices are regulated for wholesale, for retail. Here you have the information, you have the world situation, you have the distribution by region, so we can see how the regions are responding and information we have. And of course, we have here by country the different answer we have from countries. Something that I like it is the measures that operators are taking about roaming. In this part, you can see the overview with the regional perspective and the country's responses, but you can also see the measures applied. And here you can see the measures, and also you have the measures by country, the measures that each country is applying, described below. I will stop here. Of course, I will stay during this session if you have any question. Thank you. Irina, the floor is yours.
Good. Thank you very much, Irina. Please, can you just kindly confirm that you can hear me, and I'll share my slides. If you can also just confirm that you can see them. And I can. Okay. Okay, well, this is perfect. Thank you very much indeed. I just try to make that. Yes, there we go. Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak about our data collection on regulatory topics. And it's an important topic because this is the pillar on which we will stand for all the research and analysis work that ITU is doing and that many other organizations around the world are doing, because ITU is the global place where everyone turns to when they need any sort of information about the policy, regulatory, and governance environment in the ICT sector, but increasingly also in the digital area. So thank you very much indeed for that opportunity to talk about those very technical issues that have very, very far-reaching and long-standing implications in many other areas of the work that we're all doing. The World Telecommunication ICT Regulatory Survey. So it's one of the oldest, not the oldest. I'm sure that you have got my colleague Esperanza Magpantai talk about the World Telecom Indicators Database. So this is really the oldest ITU survey. The regulatory survey, I believe, is the second one. And the first edition of it was sent out to ITU member state countries in 1996. So we've been around for quite a few decades. And I'm really emphasizing on that upfront because that makes the database that we're compiling the global reference in all the different developments in the ICT sector, policy and regulatory environments since then. So really that allows researchers like myself and like many of you, I would imagine, to do a fair amount of work on trends, on new developments, on forecasting, on any sort of analysis for any sort of policy purpose. Concretely, the regulatory survey tracks three main areas. Regulation, as the title really shows it very clearly, policy, and this is something that we have been developing over the years. There was a lot less focus on policy in the early years of the survey, and a much stronger focus on policies those past few years. And the third major area that we're looking at is governance. And again, if I were to look at a little bit more of a historical perspective, in the beginning, in the 90s, we were really essentially tracking the place where regulation was happening. So whether there was a separate regulatory authority following the WTO processes and recommendations of the telecom reference paper, or whether the regulatory functions were entrusted with the government ministry. And over the years, we have actually extended that part of the survey. That was probably one of the parts of the survey that has seen very major development. And today we're really looking at a whole range of governance processes, practices, structures, and we're also looking at how the ICT sector is actually governed in relationship with and in collaboration with other sectors, because as you have for sure discussed in length in that conference as well, digital transformation is a cross-sector exercise and requires a whole of government approach. So this is also something that we've been covering in the regulatory survey. So I often get questions of why is that you're surveying the ICT regulator, but we're also talking about Competition Commission, data protection, cybersecurity. And of course, the reason is that those areas are very, very closely interrelated, and what happens in one has impact on what happens in the others. And it's important to be able to track that. I mean, again, I'm coming back to that function and mission that we have with the survey, which is to be able to describe what's happening in ICT markets, in digital markets, in regulatory environments for both ICT and digital. So to be able to understand and analyze and really make a contribution towards improving those regulatory environments. So concretely, we would be, in every edition of the survey, we would be looking at national regulatory authorities in very great length and depth. We would be looking at leadership and staffing and processes, at really the day-to-day and the strategic functioning of the regulatory authorities. And then we will, of course, also look at regulations. I mean, really, what is the basis of every country to govern, to regulate ICT and digital sectors in all the different areas, from interconnection to quality of service, to infrastructure sharing, to spectrum management, to all the competition-related areas as well. And I mentioned policies. Of course, we will also go into all the different areas that are very core to the digital sector, from universal service and access policies to broadband plans, to more recently digital transformation strategies, and all the different policy pieces that are also required today, from artificial intelligence to Internet of Things, to many other maybe more technical areas such as data governance. So concretely, the survey, the regulatory survey is a really, really long survey. And if there is someone in the room who has already been through the completion of the survey, they know it's a really, really long survey. But again, the reason for that survey being really long is that there is so much happening in all the different areas of policy and regulation. And we really feel that we ought to register all those different trends and really make sure that we keep track of all the different developments, so then we can really also do some more in-depth analytical and econometric work based on that. But because the survey is very, very long, it's also happening every other year as opposed to every year for the shorter surveys of ITU. And we consider that this is a very good base for that. Regulatory environments are not evolving at that spectacular speed that markets are evolving. So this is perfectly representative of the developments that are happening. And in the same time, we feel that this is a way to not overwhelm our administrations with having to complete the survey every year. Having said that, again, for those of you who are actually really responding to the survey, there is a great advantage as well to respond to every edition of the survey. When you complete the survey, you would always see the previous year's response. So if you are on track, and if you fill in the survey at every edition, you will be able to actually see your previous edition, and it's a lot easier because obviously this is an area that is evolving quickly, but there are many pieces. I mean, the majority of pieces are relatively stable, so you can actually really make your life easier, go through things quickly in the areas that have not experienced any change. So when you skip a year, you're not able to see that anymore because the data is not there. So it is really a lot easier for everyone if you can regularly complete every survey. And I'm very much available every time to support you. If there are any questions, if there are any difficulties. Unfortunately, we have a system that requires a little bit of maintenance every now and then, and we have little glitches as well technically, but we're always there to support you and to make that experience as painless as possible. Again, a very important exercise of collecting the data on your countries, so we can really reflect that faithfully in all the other work that we're doing across all the other areas. So concretely, the past survey was sent in 2022, the beginning of 2022, and the next one is coming up in the beginning of February 2024. So definitely look forward to that one. I'm not gonna go into lots of details. I mean, if you're interested, we can also share the PDF version of the questionnaire, which is again rather long. But if you wanted a little bit of detail, we can do that. I'm not going to do that on the call because you would probably not find it useful. But again, there are 11 sections in the survey, looking at the different areas of governance, legal frameworks and regulatory frameworks, and then policies. So you would have a big section too on legislative frameworks. We did a major revamp of that section last time around, and I would really encourage you to pay close attention to that, because this is where we really set the stage for all the legal pieces, not the regulatory pieces necessarily that the regulator is owning and developing, but really the basic foundational legislative frameworks of a country. And we're really very keen on reflecting them there. Then we have a section on the regulatory institutions, so the regulatory, typically the separate regulator for the countries which have established a separate regulator, and then the regulatory issues and processes that are related to its functioning. I mean, there is a really extensive section on that. There is a section on collaboration with other sector regulators, cross-sector regulators and ministries, an important one, especially in that context of our work on collaborative digital regulation. I mentioned the whole of government approach. This is really all about that. We really want to not only conceptualize that as a best practice at the theoretical level, but we're also supporting that work with tracking the trends and really how countries are coping with that collaboration. Sounds easier than it is. So we definitely want to help also with understanding those very complex trends that are happening. Then section 5 really looks at a very traditional area for all of you, universal service and access policies, and an area that is expanding very quickly recently, the one of digital strategies. It's a really extensive section as well, an important one. And then we have more traditional areas such as the sector structure. So looking at the ownership of the incumbent operator, competition matters, foreign ownership issues, all of that, everything that defines the sector structure. And then we have a couple of shorter sections which are on, again, important issues that are really more related to the users side of things, accessible ICTs, cybersecurity, IP telephony, all of those things. There are smaller areas there that are also plugged under those sections on emergency telecommunications or e-applications. I mean, there is a lot more detail in the extended survey. And then one section that is there since the beginning, and it's an important one, is the one on future plans. I mean, we really want to also not only take track of what has happened and what a country has been able to achieve, but also we take a moment to see what is the plan. I mean, it's important, especially in that very, very quickly evolving environment, that reflection and that outlook to the future is important. So we also want to know what is on the plan of regulators for the future. And of course, we always have a section on feedback. I get lots of complaints about our technical software, but I also get lots of compliments about the survey and its usefulness as well. So feel free to provide your candid feedback there if you are the one completing the survey. This helps us do better next time. My colleague Carmen Prado introduced the data hub, so I'm not going to do that. What is essentially important for you to remember is that the ITU Data Hub is the one place where you can find all of ITU's data, no matter if this is related to ICT statistics, to tariff policies, to regulation. All of the data is there and organized in a seamless way. So you don't need to know which data set is coming from which survey. What you really can focus on is to get the data that is most relevant to what you're doing. And then again, Carmen also had a similar slide. That's just to show that all that really huge work that we're doing on collecting data points is not the goal by itself. I mean, this is a means to an end. I mean, what we're doing then, once we have those data sets that we create in literally hundreds of indicators, is really to boost our analysis. And in the analytical pieces that we have been able to produce recently, I would really like to single out the Global Digital Regulatory Outlook that we launched at the beginning of this year, which is really going into a lot of detail on defining the trends, really looking at the trends that are defining the ICT sector and the digital transformation now in all the different regions. We really have regional analysis, we have the global trends, we have all the discussion of how those things all come together. So I would really encourage you, if you haven't seen that one, to really go and read through the sections that you find are most relevant to your work. And you will probably notice on this slide that there are two of the publications that also my colleague Carmen Prado showed, which is the ones on the impact of digitization and regulation. So what is interesting also to note is that since we have so many different data sets in ITU, we are also in a very unique position to cross-combine those and see what the insights of those different data sets tell us. And this is something that is extremely important in terms of policy planning, in terms of really taking stock of what has worked and what hasn't in the past, and see how we can better prepare for the future with the wisdom of those insights. And again, a quick note to say that the data sets that we create are not only ours, we're not doing them for ITU's sake, they're public good, if you like. I mean, this is really something that we provide for all the intergovernmental agencies, for all the international organizations, for all the academic communities out there. They're all working from our data sets. And maybe just very, very quickly, I would also like to show you something that we're doing in a different area, again with those same with those same data. And this is the work that we do on benchmarking. So some of you might be familiar with those. The ICT regulatory tracker is our benchmark that looks at the maturity of ICT regulation and regulatory mandates. And the G5 benchmark is the twin, if you like, of the tracker. And it is looking at the readiness of policy, legal, and governance framework for the digital transformation. So if you were to go and have a look and hopefully work with those benchmarks, you can start at what we call the G5 Accelerator. So that's a platform that is it's a capsule. It's a separate website from the I2 main website, and it really hosts both our metrics and the analysis and research that has been developed based on that and around them. And also importantly, the work on best practices, which is very much what we have been really building those benchmarks on in terms of the design of the metrics. So on that platform, you will find, I'm not going to go into lengthy presentations because you can do that probably yourself quite effectively, hopefully. And I know that you're not doing, you're not very early on time. So what you can find on the G5 Accelerator, maybe I skipped a little bit the top, but in the reading room, you will find all the different conceptual pieces, best practices, previous research, really the concepts of what we're doing with all the different benchmarks. And then very prominently on that homepage, you will also see links to the ICT regulatory tracker and the G5 benchmark, which is really where you will find all the different scores and all the different profiles of all the countries based again on the data that is coming from the regulatory survey, and a couple of indicators from the tariff policy service as well. And then in passing, I would like also to mention the ICT Policy Impact Lab. So this is a place where we actually demonstrate how the data that we have can be used for econometric modeling. Actually, the Policy Lab is based on some of the econometric studies that Carmen and I have presented, and then this is really how you can very practically work through click through the different combinations and see the insights of those studies in an interactive way. The I2 broadband maps, again, a very rich, very data intense resource that I2 is putting together. You can also access it from there. The digital development dashboard is something that is now being also enriched with the meaningful connectivity dashboard, but you can also access it from there. And the digital regulation platform, my colleague Nancy Sandberg has presented to you the digital regulation platform and training earlier. And again, you can also access it from there. And the reason why they're all featured on the same website is because those are the pieces of the same puzzle. I mean, they really are things that come together, build on each other, reinforce each other, and influence each other in their development. And that's, for me, an important message to close my presentation with. Data collection is an important piece of all the work that we're doing as a policy and regulatory team in headquarters and in all the other regions, together with all the different areas that we're addressing. So it's not a silo area, and it's not one thing that is separate from all the other work. This is actually a fundamental part of all the work that we're doing. Thank you very much indeed.